I'm Scott Roller. I'm a solution architect. I have my own independent consulting company called 365 Thoughts LLC. You can see my email address there, and you can kind of allude. Well, I have my blog address down here too, so it's the same as my email address, 365-thoughts.com. I've been really getting into posting a lot of videos on Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube lately. So and I'm going to try to start getting some of those to be blog posts as well. So big in the community, big into giving presentations like this and putting out content for blogs and videos and things. And hopefully today I can prove to you that model-driven apps are cool. I know that Canvas apps are a thing, but I'm more in the model-driven app world. So let's talk about those today. So here's our quick agenda. Oh, and also this may not take an hour. I don't know. Sometimes I talk kind of fast, get kind of excited. We might be here less than an hour worth of time, but we'll see how it goes. But here's our agenda. We're going to go over licensing costs, which is I think is one of the big things. The differences between getting a pure Dynamics license and just a Power Apps license for model-driven apps. We'll talk about some model-driven app examples. Um, we will talk about low code, no code, and pro code. And then one of my favorite topics is the release planner, so we can talk about that briefly. And then we're going to get into a demo, and I'm going to show some things that I built out with model-driven apps to kind of show you some examples of what can be done there. So let's talk about those licensing costs and I think of some of the big advantages here. And I'm a big Dynamics 365 guy, so I'm not trying to talk down to Dynamics 365 at all. It's just that some of those licensing costs can be expensive if you don't need a full Dynamics license. That right now, currently, the sales licenses range from $65 a month per user to $150 per user per month. And so those are what are commonly called the first-party apps. With our first-party apps, I guess I'm kind of going in reverse order here. I'm jumping to the bottom of the slide, and then I'm going to jump back up to the top. But with our first-party apps, some of the advantages is we get some restricted entities. Things like cases and goals and journeys and work orders, and we can't get those with just standard Power App. And so Microsoft built these for sales and customer service and marketing and field service. So if we need something that's purpose-built for one of those scenarios, the first-party apps are awesome, and they're worth the cost of the license. But if we don't need all that, we can go out and we can build a Power App, a model-driven Power App, directly out of Dataverse using just a Power Apps license. And the premium license is $20 per user per month, and that gives you access to unlimited Power Apps. So we could create as many as we want, and a user that has that license could access all of them. And so these are built in Dataverse, and you get the out-of-the-box entities, which are part of the common data model of accounts, contacts, activities. Those are the major ones, and those are the ones I'm going to focus on today. So we can have, accounts are businesses or, companies generally. They can be, reused in different ways, but that's typically how we look at these entities as accounts are companies. Contacts are individuals normally. And then activities are all the things that relate to those, emails and phone calls and text messages and different things like that. So those are the big out-of-the-box entities that we still get with a Power Apps license that that we would get with the first-party apps license as well, but we get it with the Power Apps license, and we don't have to build that common data model for ourselves. It comes with Dataverse. So the in my mind, the reason that we use this is for the old school XRM situation that people used to buy Dynamics licensing and then build something that was not sales or marketing or customer service related. It was a XRM or anything relationship management. Well, I think that is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about a model-driven Power App that's not a Dynamics app, not a first-party app. Some of the most recent examples that I've built in the last year or so is I built an example that was a for a truck driving or over the road truck driving company, where they wanted to keep track of their truck drivers' history, their safety reports, see if they got any uh, uh, any what am I trying to say? Any speeding tickets, tickets or violations of any kind. Um, they wanted to be able to keep track of that for their active drivers. And then also, if a driver left and wanted to come back, they wanted to be able to review that history and see should we rehire this person or not, based on their history that they captured in the Power App. Um, a big one was also this railroad maintenance app that I created. It was for a company that manufactures railroad equipment for railroad crossings, but also a big part of the money and their service is that they would go out and they would be contracted by the federal government on a monthly, quarterly, and yearly basis to review the railroad crossings. And on a monthly basis, it would be different than a quarterly or an annual basis. They would have different things they would check for each time. Excuse me. But they wanted an app that they could put on a mobile device, and also a lot of the places that they go are outside of Wi-Fi range, or they would have their phone, but they would be way out in the middle, maybe of West Texas or somewhere where they didn't really get a signal. They wanted to be able to go offline, gather their data, put it into their Power App, and then later when they're back online, have that uploaded to Dataverse in the cloud. And so we were able to do all of that. Give them, several different versions of the forms that we'll see here in a little bit. One for monthly, one for quarterly, one for annual, and gather that data offline and then upload it later. And then the last one that I'll mention here is there's a local company over in Kansas. I live in Missouri, but over in Kansas, the neighboring state, that manufactures gunpowder. And a big part of that industry, if you don't know, is making sure the quality is correct each time. And I guess I just developed the app, so I don't really know this first person point of view, but there can be big differences from batch to batch quality. They want to make sure that it's not too strong, so it's like blowing guns up, but they also want it to be strong enough that people aren't dissatisfied with the amount that needs to be used. So they went through a whole system. We developed this for the quality testers that were testing the velocity and the power of this gunpowder, and when we did all of that within a Power App. So some of the big benefits here of developing this way is that we can quickly design and deploy these new apps quickly after meeting with people and gathering some requirements and discovery on what they want. And most of the time, I've done this in an agile manner. So, showing them what we created so far, getting their feedback, and then creating some more in that agile Scrum process. It is built on the Dataverse, so we get the out-of-the-box entities that I mentioned before, that common data model. We can create custom entities, which I've definitely done on the examples that I listed above, with railroad crossings and different driver history and things like that, creating some custom entities. And we'll see that in my example in our demo. We can create all the different relationship types of one-to-many and many-to-many type of relationships. So we could have, maybe one contact that has a relationship to many railroad crossings, for instance, or different types of equipment that the railroad people would want to use when they're out in the field. And these would be, pieces of equipment that they would request and put on their truck, depending on the type of work they were going to go do. So those individuals would request and get that equipment for themselves, and that would be a one-to-many type of relationship. And there's other examples, can't really think of any right now, where there's many-to-many type of relationships as well. And all of that stuff is is doable in Dynamics, but it's also doable outside of Dynamics in these Power Apps. You get the same functionality. Really, the only thing that you're giving up is those restricted entities that Microsoft built, and there's a lot of power around those, but they're just not giving them away. You got to pay the extra licensing fee. And then a lot of this, and one of my core beliefs is I try to do as much as I can no code or low code type of development when I'm doing these power apps. There's always, a need for pro code, and I recognize that. And as a solution architect, I'll go that direction when needed. But but I have to be kind of prove it to myself, or somebody else has to prove it to me that we can't do it inside the box before we go outside the box and just start writing code. Um, Kind of as a side, and maybe I'm getting on a soapbox a little bit here, but back, several years ago, before the low code pro code thing was bigger, you would get these people that were .NET developers that came in to do Dynamics work, and that's all they knew. And they would do it the whole thing in .NET, and that gets you in a lot of bad situations when you're trying to upgrade, and now you're having to worry about code that is either depreciated or not supported any longer by Microsoft. And the easier way is if you can do it low code, no code, you don't have to worry about all those situations. All right, so let's talk about no code, low code, pro code. On the no code side, we're talking about things like business rules, business process flow, and Power Automate, which is part of the Power Platform, just like Power Apps is. On the low code side, well, let me back up and describe those a little bit better. I'm going to show them as well, but business rules kind of take the place of JavaScript as much as we can, where we are displaying or not displaying different fields. We are making them visible, making them not visible, making them required, not required. A lot of different things we can do, and we can get into also a lot of cascading logic with those business rules, where we have triggers dependent triggers that are then making other things happen. Business process flow, we'll see an example of that, but that's at the top of the form that kind of guides us through a process, and it'll make sure that the end users are using the right process in each step of the way, that the right fields are filled out. And then we have Power Automate, which, as I mentioned, is a part of the Power Platform. And this is our logic workflow tool that Power Platform gives us for, getting different triggers and then making different things happen. Power Automate is a big enough topic; it could be all its own thing. So I won't go too far into it now because I could spend, like I said, a whole hour just on that. But it's the ability to be triggered off of different events, maybe send out an email, maybe send out a text, maybe make a decision that changes data. All those things are possible within Power Automate. So then moving on to low code. These are things like Power FX, which is kind of the coding tool inside of Power Automate. You'll see Power FX in other places inside of Power Apps as well. A lot of the low code functionality inside the Power Platform is built on Power FX, and they are very similar to, and they were kind of built on the idea of formulas from Excel. So if you know Excel formulas, you're going to know Power FX pretty well. There's some differences, but not a lot. They're kind of the same concept there. I know Greg is big into Power BI, so he may not like the fact that I put Power BI on the low code side of things. But I think when you get into powerful DAX and M statements and things like that, I know that it can be very pro code. But the side that I work on when I work on Power BI, it's just changing visuals, making different pie chart, bar chart types of changes, maybe some sliders and filter changes. So I'm more on the low code side of things when I work in Power BI.
I completely agree with you, by the way. Yeah,
Okay,
a
good.
lot of these tools can kind of range, right? But what I love about Power BI is it can be low code and it can be easy, right? You've got a
Right.
ribbon with a bunch of buttons, and you
Yeah.
can actually do pretty much, a majority of what you need to do with just buttons. And so I really like how you've kind of separated some of the tooling and understanding here. One question I have for you, Scott,
Yeah.
have you used a lot of Power FX? Like, do you find the need to jump into Power FX a lot to get some of the capabilities or needs for certain solutions? Or is it like a once in the blue moon type thing?
I use it a lot more on Power Automate than I do in Power Apps. But
Hmm.
And in Power Automate, once again, I'm definitely a low code guy. I found that the Copilot not the studio, but the Copilot helper in there, the natural language for Power FX is awesome. I can just tell it, hey, I want to I don't know, a good example is not coming to mind, but a simple natural language, a prompt to, and then it'll just write the code. And almost every time I found that it's 100% correct, or I might tweak a couple things, but that Copilot add-on for writing Power FX code is awesome in my opinion.
Yeah, and Lee said handling collections is pretty common, and that's Power FX. I believe so.
Say that again. What was your?
He says handling collections like in Power
Oh,
Platform.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I use it for is for if then or kind of statements in Power Automate. Um, and then also sometimes I don't remember the names of fields, and it always remembers the names of fields for me. So that helps out as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I completely derailed you. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I think we got plenty of time. Where I was going though is I was kind of trying to not talk down to Power BI because I do think Power BI is awesome. It's just that I don't use it, in the on the more pro code side. But then, we got JavaScript, and I mentioned JavaScript before when I was talking about business rules. And JavaScript is way more powerful than business rules. But when we can use business rules instead of JavaScript, I really try to go that way. But JavaScript can do a lot of other things, like changing colors and different things on a form, and making whole sections go away, where business rules can only make individual fields go away, where JavaScript can make a whole section disappear or reappear. And we can do a lot more um, advanced logic with JavaScript. Like we could see, like we're getting this is an extreme example, but I've seen it happen where we're getting data in from a different place, maybe an integration, and the data isn't in the format that we like. We can have JavaScript kind of reformat it inside of the application so that it looks right on the page, but we're not actually having to worry about when it comes into Dataverse or wherever we're integrating it from. Worry about it there. We just let JavaScript format it for us on the page. And then we have our pro code, which there's probably more examples of pro code, but when I use it the most, or when I help developers with solutions using pro code, it's on the .NET plugins, C# .NET plugins side of things. And those can be very, very powerful. They can very advanced logic, and very much change the way that a Power App looks and acts. Some Power Apps that I've seen that have a lot of .NET plugins, they don't even look like a Power App anymore. They look like some other application, but they are a Power App. And I mentioned it right out of the gate at the beginning. The only downside that I see with not so much JavaScript, but a little bit there, but definitely with .NET plugins is if something gets depreciated, or Microsoft decides they're not going to code it that way, or an upgrade breaks the code, well, now you got to have somebody come in and fix the code for you. And maybe that's not a big problem, but I've seen it be problems, especially in upgrades to Dynamics or Power Apps. We're getting a new upgrade to that core technology, and then the code isn't supported anymore, and then it is a big expense. So if we can stay away from that as much as possible, then you don't worry about those problems. All right. So last thing I think before we get to the demo is the release planner. And so I'm big on the release planner. I think it's a great place to go out and get ideas, see what's coming up next for Power Apps, for Dynamics, for the whole Power Platform. Copilot is huge. I mentioned it a little bit, but it's you can build a whole app just using natural language for the most part. I found that you can get 80% there. Sometimes you can get 100% there, but when you get 80% there, that's great because it's built 80% of it for you, and then you can go in and make tweaks to change some things. As you mean, it's just natural language, everything. As I mentioned before, it's huge for me for Power FX. I don't have to remember all the functions and all the syntax and everything else. I just tell it what I want, and it comes up with all of that, and I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize that. That makes sense. Let's copy, let's paste that in. The new Microsoft Fluent Design it's been out for a little bit, but it was a big thing on the release planner, and I love that. They're Microsoft's trying to make everything look and feel the same way, so that when you go from Excel to a Power App, it doesn't feel like a whole new experience. Everything is kind of placed the same way, named the same things, and the buttons kind of look all alike. And then I love the fact that some things on the release planner, a lot of it comes out in two releases a year. But model-driven apps is on a monthly schedule, so you're going to get monthly updates to model-driven apps. Sometimes they're not that exciting because because every month they can't have exciting updates. But I like the fact that they're updating it monthly. All right, here we go. We're on to the demo. So I'm going to get out of my slide deck here. I'm going to find where I put my demo environment, which is right here. Okay, so maybe I shouldn't assume that everybody knows what the Power Apps Maker portal is. So let's start there, kind of at the beginning. And if you go to make.powerapps.com, if you have an environment, you can log into it. If you don't, then you can request a free developer environment, which is kind of cool. Which is exactly what I have here. They don't give you as much storage space and things like that, but it's a good place to go out and play around with things, and you can get your feet wet with creating new apps and Power Automate flows, and you can even create um, Copilot agents and things like that, which I haven't done enough of yet, and that's kind of the next thing I want to do for myself is start creating some agents out there. But you can see all the different areas here where you can learn, you can get the apps, you can get the tables. If I can go into my apps now, it'll list all the apps that I have. And this one at the top, this 365 Thoughts, is the one we're about to look at. And so in here, I won't spend much time on this, but I could hit the pencil, which is the edit button. And this is where I can go in and I can start editing the app that we're about to look at and start making changes to it, the views and the forms and the different fields and everything. And it's taken a while to load, but here it is. So here's the editable version of my app that I'm going to show you. So I did launch it before. And so launched in non-editable form, this is what it looks like. So if you're familiar with Dynamics 365, it looks exactly like Dynamics. The same navigation. You have the left navigation where you have the home and you have the recent places that you've been to, and you can pin different things that you want to get back to over and over again. So I've pinned my Canadian nachos, Canadian foods thing. So maybe I should go take a step back and explain what my app is all about, because I kind of jumped into it a little bit too quickly there. I created this about a year ago for the Canadian Summit. I went up there and I presented to the Canadian Summit in Vancouver last March, and I jumped straight into having some fun with my Canadian friends. And this is a app for food critics to go out and review different Canadian foods. So very simply, I got the Canadian Summit logo up here. I put in some theming colors for that logo. And then down the left side, we have accounts, which are our companies that would be involved with this process. We have our contacts, which are the individuals. And in this case, these individuals would probably be the critics that are out there reviewing food around Canada. We have our activities, which once again are things like email and tasks and phone calls. And each place along the way. So sorry. These are the common data model areas that we talked about before, the accounts, the contacts, and the activities. These are the things that we got straight out of Dataverse that just kind of come with with Dataverse. And then down here below is that custom entity that we'll look at later that I created from scratch. So Canadian Foods as an entity didn't exist when I started building this, but I created it from scratch. And I'm also going to back up one more step. Sorry, I keep kind of getting ahead of myself here. I do want to describe each kind of piece of the puzzle. So for accounts, we can see that this is my active accounts view. So this is a view of multiple records. And I understand that I may be going very basic for some people, but but if there are people in the audience that have never seen a Power App before or don't know how one is built, I wanted to get down to kind of the base level of what each piece is doing. So we have our views, which is a listing of different records of a certain type. So these are accounts. You can have many different views. So you could, come in here and I could choose, well, I'm not really concerned about my active views, but I want to see the inactive accounts. So I'm not concerned about my active accounts. I want to see the inactive accounts. Well, there aren't any. So when I choose that view, it doesn't show any data. But if I go back to my active accounts, it'll show all of the active ones. And then, and each view can also be defined by the different columns that you want to display. So you're not going to show everything that's in the record on the view. You just want to show the things that are most important. And then if you drill into an individual record, you can get into the form. And on the form, this is where there can be fields that are not displayed on the form that are in the Dataverse or in the database that you choose not to display. But this would be where you display most of the fields that are important for an individual record. So in this case, we're looking at an account. So we're looking at things like the account name and the phone number and the website and the parent account. So that's a relationship where account has a one-to-many relationship to account. So this one account has a relationship up to its parent account. And you can have that kind of hierarchy as long as you want it to be. You can have parents of parents of parents of parents as it goes. In the middle, it's kind of cool. This is out of the box too. That's built by Microsoft that they give you is the timeline, and the timeline will show you on a day and time stamped of when an email came in, when a phone call came in, and it'll do other things too that it's not showing here, but it'll show like when a record was created or when something that's related to this account was created and added to the account. It'll show it. Another relationship that it has is the primary contact. So we can see that this contact or this individual is the primary contact for this account. And then it also shows a little bit of a preview of data of that primary contact. So you don't have to drill down on Renee's record. You can do this also a little bit and get a preview of it, but it'll show down here below what their email is and what their phone number is, or their business phone is. If you're not just concerned about the primary contact, though, you can get a list of all the contacts that are for this account. So this is a list or a subset of the contacts that are related to this account. Microsoft also does other cool things, like gives you a map that you can use so you can see the location of the account, different things like that. So I think I've gone probably a little, maybe even too far into the weeds on that, on some of the detail here. We'll stay a little bit higher. So those are accounts. And then let's look at contacts quickly before we get into my custom app and kind of the point of this whole thing. So a contact is an individual. So you'll see the difference here between an account and a contact is now that we have a first and a last name, and we're talking about one individual person, and this person can then be related to a company. So Jim is related to Coho Winery. And if we went to Coho Winery, we would see that Jim is in the contacts list for Coho. We're gathering information about phone numbers and emails, and if there's a customer that's related to this contact. Some of the things on some of these fields as well, like the email, there is a button to the right of the email. This is a special type of field called an email field. And there's a button over here that if I push this email button, it'll pop up a window to allow me to automatically send an email directly from this form. If I push the phone button, then, it's trying to tell me that there it is. Okay, I did it. It opened a brand new phone call activity record that's related to Jim. And if I fill this out and save it, then this activity would show in Jim's list of activities and discard. There we go.
Scott, we've got a question, by the way, in the chat.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the chat. So
No,
yeah,
yeah,
what's the
that's what I'm
question?
here for. No,
Yeah.
that's what I'm here for. I'll bubble them up for you. Question is, do you typically provide clients with direct access to the underlying data, or do you maintain control of it?
Depends on the client. If the client it wants to be hands off, then I and other people like myself are happy to kind of do that for them. But I know a lot of clients that are wanting to be more hands on, that maybe even have a bigger IT group or department. Then they want to do some of that themselves. So they want us to kind of come in and kind of create something for them and do a train the trainer, and then they would become experts and be able to do that themselves as well.
Well, you're typically doing this in customer tenants, right? And I think maybe Taylor, that's the gap that in your understanding, which is rather than building outside of a customer's tenant where they don't have access to the data, you're typically building in their tenant, and they can get to the data. It's just what do they want to do with it?
Yeah.
Typically, they have IT that manages the Power Platform or a Power Platform admin that technically has access to all this underlying data. But all this development work is happening on top of the data in Dataverse.
Yes.
Does that help answer your question, Taylor? Awesome.
Okay, so to answer that question maybe slightly better, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because this is kind of boring behind the scenes stuff. But if I go back into make.powerapps.com and I go into the data over here on the right or the left, you can see that in my app I have accounts, activities, Canadian foods, contact, and critic process. And then in the whole environment, I have all these other things. And these are the things that come with the common data model that Microsoft just gives you as a part of Power Apps that you could use and transfer into the app. I haven't needed it for my simple example. Let's see, what is this? Oh, that's the automation. Okay. Yeah. So that's like different automated things that I have in my app. But yeah, so here's you can get to the table. You can create a table. You can even view. Let's see if I click on accounts. I think it'll show me.
We
Yeah,
actually
here
have
we go.
another question that is right
Sure,
along the lines of what you're showing. What column
sure.
in the account table keeps the record unique to your current app, given the possibility to have other apps store data in the account table, which is exactly why we're talking about Dataverse, right?
Yep, yep. Yeah, so you can say edit table, come in here, look at the data, change change the views and the columns and everything, and see it all here. But there is a column that you don't normally see. I'm not even sure if you can get to it this way. Back in the old days of being able to, um, let me see if I can get to it here. Uh, I don't want a new column though. Back in the old days when we had on-premise, you could get to the SQL tables. There's a field called the GUID, and the GUID is a 38 character unique value that every record in Dataverse in your environment has, and they're never duplicated. And that's how you know that this account is different from another one, even if everything is exactly the same, that they are unique because of that GUID value.
And one thing I also mentioned is the beauty of Dataverse is these are things you don't have to really handle, right? You don't have to handle the relationships. You're not going to get replication of tables. It's trying to make that easy and abstract that, GUIDs and having to use keys, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. You can just say an account table is an account table. Here's the
Right.
entities that have gotten that. And that's about it. Everything else is just kind of done in the back end.
Right. And when you create a new relationship, you don't need to know how SQL would do that or how to write the query or anything else. Dataverse just does it. You say, hey, I want to relate accounts to contacts, and it knows how to do that, and it just does it, and then you have the relationship available to you.
Yep.
Are there any other questions?
Good question, Kunga.
Okay. All right. So there we are. So we talked about accounts, we talked about contacts, we talked about views, we talked about the form. One of the things I wanted to mention too, if you want to get this deep into things, you can have different forms as well for different maybe end users. So a accounts receivable person might have a different form from a salesperson, and that may be wide open where you can choose which form you have, or you can restrict it by security model. And I'm not going to get the security model because that once again that's a huge topic, but you can restrict that. If somebody has a certain security role, then they will only see a certain form as it's developed. All right. So I want to encourage all the questions that you have, but I am going to move on to Canadian foods. But if we need to back up, then that's fine as well. I don't want to discourage anybody from asking questions. Let's talk about this little thing that I built, though. So once again, keeping it simple, I only had accounts, contacts, and activities from out of the box, and then I created this one custom entity. As you can probably imagine, this could get huge, and this could be, and the other examples of the apps that I built for those other clients, the railroad crossing and the truck and the gunpowder, were way larger than this. A lot of custom entities, a lot of custom, hundreds of custom fields and things like that. But if we look at Canadian foods, once again, I did this kind of as a joke to kind of have fun with the Canadian people that I knew up at the summit. But in here, some of the key things that you get with Power Apps, with model-driven apps specifically, is right at the top. You'll notice the business process flow. And this is where I was mentioning earlier. It helps keep the end user on task on what's needed in each step of the way. And in the sales, uh, the sales form that Microsoft has created, in the first party apps, they do a great job of this. This is what we need to know when we're qualifying a lead. This is what we need to know when we are presenting the paperwork. And I forget the actual terms, but they have a great business process flow at the top. In my simple example here, though, we have the critic process, and when we want to make sure that we have the right type selected, or that we have a type selected. So we're going to select a food type, and then we're going to give a name for that food. And then we want to make sure that we have the food price. And then we want to make sure that we gather the spice level. And then we want to make sure that we enter the ingredients that was in the food. So once again, very basic here. But if we go down below and look at what I built in this custom entity, I have I created a relationship back to contact, so I can have a lookup. And this lookup, this little magnifying glass over here, will allow me to look up and find a different or any contact in the database and assign it to this food record. I'm using my friend Jim again as my example of the critic that's reviewing these Canadian nachos, as I'm calling them. If you're familiar with Canadian food or Canada, you guys might be actually, because you're up there near the border, or closer than I am at least. Poutine is a food that they eat a lot of times at hockey games, probably other places as well, but I've seen it at NHL hockey games, and it's a combination of French fries, gravy, and cheese curds. So, and then I nicknamed that Canadian nachos, which the Canadians got a kick out of. And so we have a lot of different field types here that I'm kind of glossing over maybe as I'm going down. But we have this relationship to contact for the critic name. We have a pick list, which is a drop-down list of different values. So here's the different foods that I provided as being available. We have maple syrup. We have back bacon, which is commonly referred to as Canadian bacon, maybe in the United States. We have a poutine. We have Hawaiian pizza. I don't even know how to pronounce that. That's some French name that I found, but it's basically a pot pie. And then if you're a fan of the series Letterkenny, which I am, you'll notice that they always drink Pupper's beer. So I put that on there too. It's kind of a funny thing. But as we go down the list here, now we have just a freeform text field for the name of the food. So I put in just freeform text Canadian nachos. We have a currency field for food price. So I put in $10 there. And then we have a calculated field. So this is, there's a lock next to it so that you can't change the value of this field, but it's being calculated off of the food price. So it's doing a 10% cost upgrade, I guess, is probably a better term for it than that. But 10% of whatever you put in food price will be calculated into the total price. And that's kind of an example maybe of, I don't know, tax or something like that. So if I put in 12, oh, I forgot, you got to save it. The calculation happens after the save. So I put in 12, then 10% more of that is, $1.20 gets added. We'll look at this in a second, but an example of one of my business processes is whenever I change the value up here of the food type, then the wiki URL changes to go to the correct wiki page for the food that I've selected. So if we go down to our poutine example, and now we have the wiki page for poutine, and if I go out here to the uh, globe, it'll launch the poutine wiki page site and give you all the information that you need for that food. And I did that through business rules. I can show you that here in a few minutes. We have just a straight up number field for level of spice. We have a toggle switch for would we try this food again, yes or no. And then we just have a nice big text field for collecting the identifiable ingredients that are in the food. So the fries, the gravy, and the cheese curds. All right. I think I'm going to pause there for a second. Are there any questions on any of that?
Any questions? Not seeing anything in the chat. Feel free to come off mute if you got a question. Guess you're just rocking it. Everybody's salivating from all the Canadian goodness.
Okay. All right. All right. Then let's move on to some more exciting things like business rules. And I'm trying to remember where the business rules are located so I can show you one of them. May have to just go old school and do it a different way. I always kind of forget where it's at in here. Maybe it's here. Oh boy. All right. Where did I put it? All right. Never mind. Bad demo if I can't find it. I'm gonna show you, and then we can look at maybe the back end if you're interested in what the business rule was. That's what I was actually trying to get to, is how it's built. But here's an example of, well, one of the examples we've already seen, which is a longer kind of cascading trigger. The trigger is off of when food type changes. Anytime food type changes, it goes down through this cascade of, is it a maple syrup? If it is, yes. Oh, okay. If it is, then I'm going to put the maple syrup Wikipedia URL in there. If it is puppers, then it's going to go through and say, is it maple syrup? No. Is it back bacon? No. Is it poutine? No. Is it bam, 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 all the way down the bottom? Oh, yeah, it is puppers. So then it's going to put in the Wikipedia URL for whatever we've chosen up above. And that's basically what it's doing. It's just looking for a change in this field, and it's going down each value and seeing, is it true? Is it true? Is it true? And when it gets the one that is true, then it gives the corresponding Wikipedia value that I went and looked up and put into the business rule. Another fun thing that I've done here is for, well, kind of a history here. If you, everybody may be aware of this, I wasn't kind of before I started this project, so I thought this was a funny thing, is that Canadian pizza was actually developed in Canada. And, Canadian pizza is a combination of pineapple and ham on a pizza. And some people love it and some people do not like it. And so I thought it was a funny thing in two cases, and the fact that there's a wide variance of people who either like it or don't, and then also the fact that Hawaiian pizza doesn't seem like something that would be developed in Canada. Before I get, once again, trying to get ahead of myself, one thing I do want to point out again is this is a recommendation field. So if I go over here to the light bulb and push on recommendation, it'll say, "Oh, hey, you might want to try Hawaiian pizza. It's ham and pineapple. That sounds delicious." And so you can push apply, and it'll choose Hawaiian pizza for you. But if you come down here and just choose Hawaiian pizza on your own, then this alert comes up and says food types. You're not Hawaiian, and that's nasty. So there's a couple different things that we can do there. We can do an alert, which kind of gives you an error message of something, a different scenario that's happened, and that is a business rule that is doing that alert. And then you have the food type, or the not the food type, but the recommendation type that's on this field that allows you to. Oh, and this is now that I'm remembering correctly, this is a business rule as well. The recommendation is on food type, and that gives you this recommendation, and you can apply the recommendation if you want to.
So we have a question, Scott, if you got a
Yes, go
minute.
for it. Go for it.
Yeah, so these are actually stellar questions. One is, can stages be triggered or changed based on some event in your app or some event that's happening? And then also, can the stage be customized where only certain users can advance based on or change a stage? So like type selected versus others that everyone can change.
Yep. So, and I have an example of that. I wasn't good at this level, but I will because the question's asked. I'm not sure about restricting stages based on like a person. That would be basically on their um
On
uh,
the role.
on their role, right? On their security role. That
Yeah.
may be possible, but I don't remember ever doing that. It sounds like something that could happen though. So let's leave it at that. But I do know that if I choose Hawaiian pizza, that I have up above, if you notice, it changes. On anything other than Hawaiian pizza, it says, okay, we want to know the type and the food price and the spice level. If you choose Hawaiian pizza, then it says, don't eat Hawaiian pizza, and it gives you that error and it won't let you proceed. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where you have the error down below, but you also get the error and the change in the conditional change in the process. So this is called a conditional change. And if I showed you the process, you could see that it diverges off and goes to a different point and changes where it's at. Anything
Awesome.
else?
I think that's a good call out again, so people can understand how roles can be applied, how a model different, how a model driven app can kind of handle all these types of scenarios. I mean, right back to one of your original slides, it can be XRM, right? This is like an anything
Oh,
relationship management type tool that you can build,
I mean, that's the biggest application here is if
right?
it's not one of the classic models that Microsoft's already built out that's worth the additional licensing cost. If it's something else, like you want a simple thing like this, let's gather information on food critics. Well, you don't need a big fancy license for that. You can just build it out in a model driven app and get away with a cheaper license, and it is XRM. It's food relationship management, if you want to call it that. So yeah. Um, is anybody interested in seeing kind of the behind the scenes of how a business process flow is, or a business rule is built?
I, for one, love to see it. I see
Okay.
Brent says yes. Can we get any other votes? Is anybody still awake on the other side? Can we get some applause, something? Yes, we're getting some yeses. Taylor says Dataverse view. Good call, Taylor. Is the business logic, is that Power FX though, or is it Dataverse based, or both?
Um, I think PowerFX is only Dataverse based. I don't think you can use PowerFX if you're not in the Dataverse.
Right. Okay. So I think to answer your question, Taylor, it is Power FX itself. That's what we're going to check out.
It's taking a while to load.
Come on, demo gods, don't do
Yeah, I
this to
know.
us.
I know. I know. I know.
Just give it a second.
This is kind of an extra. I wasn't prepared to actually do this, so if I was, I would have had it loaded beforehand.
No,
Here
it's
we
all
go.
good.
Yeah.
It's all good. Oh, this looks like old
Uh,
school dynamic. Old school
yeah, it
dynamics
is
almost.
because I know this like the back of my hand, and the other way, going in through this way, I was having problems fumbling around, and I didn't want to fumble too much. So, oh, come on. There we go. So, here's the Canadian foods. Here is the business rules. And so here's our two business rules. We have the food URLs and we have the Hawaiian pizza. So let's look at food URLs. This is the more complex of the two, just because it has more stages, really. But we're coming in, we're saying, is food type equal to maple syrup? If yes, then set the sample URL to the maple syrup wiki URL. If that's not true, then hey, let's check to see if it's backbacon. If it is, then let's set the wiki page to the backbacon URL. And just like I said before, it's just going to go down, cascade down through each one of these until it finds a true value, because it has to find a true value, because one of those values is going to be true in that list, and then it'll provide the correct URL value based on what it finds. So let's look at the other one. This one's very simple. So we can see here for Hawaiian pizza, the condition is if food type equals Hawaiian pizza. If that's true, then show the error message of you're not Hawaiian and that's nasty. If it's not true, then let's come down and let's show that recommendation of, hey, you might want to try Hawaiian pizza. It's ham and pineapple and it sounds delicious. So, that's a real simple example of that business rule of what can happen. Some of the other things here, let's deactivate this real fast.
And when you get a moment, I got a really good question for you, actually. It's just not based on the business rules.
Now, based on the business rules? Okay, one second. So some of the other things that we can do, we can add a recommendation, we can lock or unlock fields, we can show an error message, which I'm talking about. We can set a field value, we can set a default value, we can set a business required, whether the field is required or not, and we can set visibility. So like I said, these are basic, but if it fits these criteria, then business rules are awesome. If you're outside of anything the business rules can do, then the next stage is JavaScript. And JavaScript can be very valuable there, where you can do a lot more advanced things that business rules will not allow you to do. That is the end of my comment there. So what was the question?
Question was, how do you do bulk operations? Let's say if you wanted to update like a bunch of different food prices for a model-driven app, how do you do those type of bulk operations against Dataverse?
Okay. 1 second. I'm going to let this finish. Probably should have just left it alone, and there we go.
Nice.
Okay, we're done. So to update, so let's go. You probably can't see that, but the Teams thing wants to pop up and block what I can see. Go away, go away, go away. 1 second. Here we go. Let's get back to. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Yeah, here's where we want to be. So if we went to, I don't know, you have to use your imagination here a little bit, because I don't have a lot of data in this system. So if we had hundreds of Canadian foods records, and we want to update a certain subset of those, we could do a filter by keyword or some other filter up here to get our subset of data that we wanted. And then we can export to Excel. And well, all right, so we can export to Excel. Let me see if I can, that's in my downloads. Let's see if I can make this work for us. The weird thing, another weird thing is that I don't have all I have is in the cloud apps on this machine. So oh, here we go. Sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. My other screen is trying to pop up and get me to work. little bit of manipulation here. 1 second, bear with me. Okay. So what you can do is you can export that to Excel. You can get your list of records, and like I said, this list could be huge, depending on how much data you have. And you can then you can make your updates here, and you can make your updates to any of the columns that you chose. Right now there's only 4 chosen, but I could have, before I exported, I didn't do this obviously, but I could have chosen to have a lot more fields here, and then you can come in and change that data in this Excel spreadsheet and save it, and then re-import it back into the system. And because of, if you notice, our first column is D. We're not seeing A through C. Let me expand those out for you. And this will show you also a previous question about the GUID, if it'll let me do it. It should show us the GUID. There we go. There's C. So C is the modified on date, says do not modify, right? These are the fields these are the columns that you don't want to modify during this process, but you can go and you can look at them. This is a checksum that I don't really know exactly what it does, but here is the big, long, hairy 38 character GUID that I was referring to before. So for Canadian nachos, this is the unique value that nothing else in the system is going to have. That only relates to this Canadian nachos record. And then the pot pie record has this other completely unique 38 character that only relates to its record. And if these records were ever deleted, that GUID would go away, and I guess could be reused. I haven't really tested that to see if the GUIDs are ever reused, but there's a guarantee that there's never going to be a duplicate of a GUID inside of your Dataverse. So, but this is why when you export, change the data, and then re-import, the system knows exactly what data to change. It's all based on the GUID. It finds the corresponding GUID, sees the field that was changed. Maybe you change the field type to the food type to something else. And then when we go back in and import this, the food type will be changed in Dataverse because of everything that I just showed here. Does that make sense?
I'm good. Does this help answer your question?
Did I go way too
See
deep, or
thumbs
was that
up.
or was that the question?
I thought that was awesome. I
Okay.
loved how deep you went.
Okay.
And Kanga just said yes.
Okay.
And we have another question that is along the same lines by Taylor. Have you experienced data size and performance limitations? Mentioned Power Apps. I was kind of saying in the chat, are we talking Dataverse or what? Again, given we're talking about model-driven apps, is there some like size or scale that you try and like stay away from with model-driven apps, or is it pretty performant?
Yeah, yes, it performs pretty well. You can get to, and I've heard of people, very large organizations that are getting into like the terabytes of data that maybe have some performance hits. There's also problems with I was trying to show it here if I can get to it. Maybe I can, although I don't really recall exactly where it is. So maybe I'll just talk about it. Getting in here into the Power Platform Admin Center, you can start seeing things about how much data is being used in each category. Things like activity logs. Those are a big one where you'll run out of, especially if you have auditing turned on inside of your application. Every audit line gets tracked as a log entry, and then your log starts running out of space. And then you got to worry about, okay, do we want to, how much log history do we want to keep? And should we start deleting that? And then the conversation goes to, should we delete it or should we buy more storage? But storage in Dataverse can get kind of expensive, especially if we're talking about terabytes, if we're talking about a large number. Um, so those are all things that have to be considered, and that they give you tools for that I don't have my finger right on it right now, but I know I've used it, and it's in here somewhere where you can see that information about where your data is being used and where you might be having a problem. Oh, here you go.
Taylor,
Here's log.
Taylor, did that help answer your question? I know you had more specific questions around Power BI and Power Apps. Feel free to come off mute if you like. We did get another question from Kunga, which I'm loving how active we are here.
Okay.
Do you see larger scale companies sticking with on-prem databases with gateways rather than going with Dataverse? That's a great question because
Yep.
I think sometimes trying to move customers that are like so used to on-prem or have made large investments, this idea of Dataverse is so foreign to them. But
Yeah.
that's what we're here to do, right? Evangelize.
Right. And in my experience, it all comes down to the attitude that the organization has about owning their views on owning their own data. My personal view is that it's nearly impossible to be more safe with data than putting it in the Microsoft data center. Microsoft data center has redundancy on top of redundancy, can back up your data, can make sure that it's safe, has all kinds of security, multi-factor authentication, all the stuff that people can't get to. But certain companies, especially like in finance industry, it seems like, and other, and government and things like that, although government has its own government cloud, but different industries like that seem to want to own their own data, and they think the data in their on-premise environment is safer and that people can't get to it as easily. I don't really buy it. I'll be quite honest. I think it's actually safer in the cloud. Because of all those uh, redundancies and things that Microsoft gives you. You can't build that out your own. But certain companies feel like that they want to have their hands on it and they don't want to give it away. So I really think it comes down to the attitude that an organization or a company has about data.
Great question, though. I will also mention just this idea of how you think about Power Platform getting you away and abstracting you away from like having to manage infrastructure. That's one of the biggest reasons you move to Power Platform and Dataverse and low code, right? Is you shouldn't be spending your time having to, spin knobs and tubes on, database and infrastructure. You should be building value. And
Right.
that's what we're doing here, right? You're building business value.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions? Scott, you may have got more than what you would have asked for, but I think we have covered such a good, amazing breadth and depth on this. I feel like I'm starting to see the light that model-driven apps are pretty cool.
Well, right, and so one of the things I haven't talked about, and real brief here, is that I don't hate Canvas apps, but Canvas apps, it takes so much longer to build all of this that we're looking at here out, as opposed to model-driven apps just kind of gives you all this, and you just start building the data that you want and some of the different things and the look and feel of the forms and the views. But this is just like dynamics, so this works, and this is already built. I didn't have to build any of the look and feel that you're seeing here. I just started building the data. Whereas with a Canvas app, you're starting with a blank slate, and you got to build everything, the buttons and the columns and everything. And so I know I'm biased, but I think there's a lot of value here in not having to build all that.
I know we've got some Canvas app people on the call. Hopefully,
Yeah.
no feelings are hurt here.
No, I'm
Brent, I'm
sorry.
looking at you.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I
I
think
didn't,
there's a place for everything, right?
no, I do
And
too. I do too.
you know, what I love about like Canvas apps is when you got to do something down dirty and like super specific. But when you think of something like, to your point, like an XRM or
Yep.
something where like teams have to collaborate, business functions, there's multiple business functions. That's kind of where I start leaning towards model driven.
Right. Right. All right. Yeah, I don't hate Canvas apps really. I mean, they have their place and their purpose, but in the scenario that I said that I'm showing here, I think it's it would take more effort to do it that way than it does this way. So yeah.
I think I've got a great licensing question from Lee. He says, I don't think model driven apps are available to Power Apps users accessing Power Platform through M365 licensing, right? I think this takes us back to one of your earlier slides.
Yeah, I have a slide up here on my other screen that addresses that. So let me find that for us. Where did I put it? Yeah, it's here. Okay, so these were two. I meant to share this earlier, and I got kind of carried away with my explaining of things. But here are the actual license pages at Microsoft on how things are licensed. So these are the Power Apps licenses. You have a free developer license. You got the $20 per user per month premium, and then if you have a whole bunch of seats, if you have over 2,000, you can get it for $12 per user per month. Um, so you do need to have the Power Apps license for it to work. I think he's right. I don't think you can have just an M365 license to get that done. It has to be this. But then on the Dynamics side, here's the licensing cost just for the sales, where you get a free trial, but then you can get the Sales Professional for 65, and on down the line is all the way up to 150 for a Sales Premium, or even more if you want to get the LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Yeah, and Lee asked a good question. Is it the builders or do the consumers need that premium license as well?
It's the consumers, yeah.
Right.
So I can build an app on my free developer plan, but then somebody needs to have a premium license to consume it.
Yep. Now I've got a curveball here, only because I was writing a blog last night on premium connectors, and there was one of the things that came up was when you're doing like building on Teams or using Dataverse on Teams. That's a whole nother licensing concept there. But I'm pretty sure you can build model-driven apps. Is that something where you don't need the premium licensing if you're doing it on Teams, or is this such an edge case you haven't ran into much?
Yeah, I haven't read into it a bunch. That may be true, but I haven't developed any apps on Teams, to be honest.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
Gotcha.
I don't
Gotcha.
know the answer to that. Yeah.
Teams and model-driven apps don't appear to be available. Thanks, Lee. Going down the rabbit hole of like the whole Teams licensing that you get like bundled with E365, like the enterprise versions of M365, guys. That's why we love licensing, right? Bye,
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
everybody.